A viewer had seen my video on the shut door policy of the Seventh-day Adventist pioneers that was held between 1844 and 1851. And this dealt with the prediction by those pioneers of the return of Jesus Christ in 1851. And they were wondering why they didn't see a response to the video on the shut door policy. To that viewer, you're not likely to see a response to that video, because I doubt if very many Seventh-day Adventist members study their history enough to know what took place then. And those that do study it are afraid to say anything about it, because not only does it show Ellen White to be a false prophetess, but it also shows her to be a false teacher, as was all of the early pioneers. What happened was, when Jesus didn't return in 1844, as they had predicted, they scrambled to find out what was going on. Why hadn't Jesus came back? So they came up with this 7 years of tarrying time. And during that time, Ellen White talked about the door of salvation was shut, and that no one was going to be saved during that 7-year period. That's why it is called the shut door policy. That's what Ellen White taught, and it was false teachings by her. But yet she was a prophet of God and supposed to have these visions and shown that the door of mercy had been shut and it wasn't going to be open again, because all Jesus was doing now was purifying the people and getting them ready for him to come back in 1851. Of course, Jesus didn't come back in 1851, and the shut door policy was quickly dropped by the Seventh-day Adventist pioneers then. And so they just don't talk about it, because it shows Ellen White to be a false teacher as well. And it shows her to be totally misrepresenting God. God doesn't give visions like that. God doesn't give anyone information like that is wrong. And so as a result of that, you're not likely to see a response to it, because none of them know how to respond to it. If they respond to it, they've got to admit that Ellen White held the shut door policy, and thus she was a false teacher. And they would have to show that during that time, what happened during that time. Why was the door of heaven supposedly shut and no one was going to be saved? It was because Ellen White again had predicted the return of Christ in 1851, along with Joseph Bates and the early pioneers. So they're not likely to respond to it, because they have to show too many false teachings of Ellen White, who was supposed to be a prophet of God. And here she is out teaching all the wrong things, telling people the wrong thing, leading them down the path of destruction. So you're not likely to see any Seventh-day Adventist try to respond to the shut door policy. In fact, the ones on YouTube don't even know enough about their own history to respond to it anyway. It would take someone probably in the hierarchy, or a seasoned, one of their seasoned pastors, to even try to answer it. They can't deny it. It's in a lot of their writings. I've read it many, many times in different writings of the Review and Herald, and in the writings of Ellen G. White. So don't look for a response to something they don't know how to respond to. You'll find they have selective responses like that. For instance, like the 2-3 angels messages. You'll never see a response to that, because once again it shows Ellen White is a false teacher and a false prophet. So they have selective responses in which they respond to the stupidest things, and the things they need to respond to, they can't do it. In fact, it wasn't long ago when Rushdie II tried to respond to one on the second coming of Jesus Christ that I had shown Ellen White had predicted in 1844. And because he didn't know the history of the church, he brought into the 1844 investigative judgment, which was never a part of that message to begin with. In fact, 1844 wasn't even formulated and invented until 1857. So by not knowing the church, he was actually proving that Ellen White predicted the return of Jesus Christ in 1844. And that's what happens when they don't know their history. They try to make responses and find out they do nothing but show that Ellen White was a false teacher and a false prophet as well. So you can find quite a few of my videos. They just don't have the intelligence to respond to. They don't have the history of their own church. And as I said, only a seasoned pastor would even attempt to answer it. And then he knows he would get eat up with facts. Just too many facts out there to show that they were wrong and that Ellen White was a false teacher and a false prophet as well. But if that's what they want to follow, they follow her to their own doom. That's the bottom line. If they want to latch onto the coattails of Ellen White and follow her off into hell or wherever she is, then that's their prerogative. The only thing I can try to do is show how wrong they are in hopes of getting more people out of the Seventh-day Adventist organization. Until next time, this has been Golly saying, God bless.